welcome back to the Athletic Mastery podcast with myself, Chris Honor. Today, I'm really delighted to have a former colleague, a good friend, and probably one of the most respected people I know within professional football. Dave Bailey, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you for that kind introduction. Yeah, I'm very well. Yeah, not too bad at all, Chris. Not too bad at all.
Brilliant. So obviously we know each other from our times, working together at Accrington Stanley initially, and then of course at Blackpool. Tell the listeners a bit about who is Dave Bailey. How did you get into football, and what are your motivations? And tell us about your journey up to now.
Yeah, well, listen, it's been a long time since I've done one of these sort of podcasts. I think the last time I'd done one, I think we had the pandemic and COVID and the shutdown, and so I haven't done one for a while. So apologies. But yeah, listen, I kind of got into football um, grassroots, like most people, starting out volunteering. That's how you do it. You start out volunteering, grassroots coaching. That's what I did. And then took some coaching qualifications, moved into working for Blackpool Football Club Community Trust, which used to be a government scheme many years ago. And it gave me an opportunity to apply to go to America, the USA. And I went out there with goal line soccer clinics, did 4 seasons out there, loved it, came back, ended up working for Bolton Wanderers and Bobby Charlton Soccer Schools, and then was offered an opportunity at Bolton Wanderers full time. And that was leading not just academy sides, but it was also an international academy where coaches would go all over the world. And I mean, all over the world. I've been some fabulous places. And they basically coach players, teams, and look to bring those teams and players back to Bolton. And that's really how the love of scouting and recruitment came in from that, really. And then from Bolton Wanderers, after 13, 14 years, I moved to Accrington Stanley as head of recruitment in the academy. That's where we kind of met each other. You came and scouted for us at Aki. And then from Accrington Stanley, which at the time I always used to say was the smallest club in the Football League, the club that never dies. And then I moved to what arguably can be the biggest club in the world. I moved to Manchester United. I had a good 6, 7 seasons there. Fantastic time at United. Travelled the world watching football. And I mean, again, we're lucky again, travelled the world. And then I moved to Blackpool Football Club as the academy head of recruitment. My club that I supported as a man and boy, stood on the scratching sheds watching them. So yeah, from the days of Alan Ball, Billy Eyre, Graham Carr, Sam Ellis, I'm a diehard Blackpool fan. So it was fantastic working for them, hence our relationship struck up again. And then I decided to have a real curveball, real out of my comfort zone. And I took an opportunity with Team Feepay, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I'm the regional football representative in the Northwest, mainly covering Manchester and the Lancashire area. And I'm also Academy Scout now at top of the Championship, Leeds United. So that's a little bit of my background there for you. I hope that's kind of answered that question a little bit.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's great that you've covered virtually all avenues, Dave, with that, because obviously going from traveling, because obviously when you're traveling, you're going to meet a lot of new people. You're going to be out of your comfort zone, experiencing new cultures, new ideas. And when it comes to obviously the recruitment side, that's the key thing, is building the new relationships within different regions, different countries. And it's great to obviously see that you're not just keeping it domestically from grassroots, but also not afraid to go into the full-time head of recruitment roles, and then also taking that step back. Well, I say step back, but coming out of professional football to now focus on Team Feepay. So what's been the biggest difference, really? Because a lot of people know you more for your involvement within the professional game. What's the
Yeah.
biggest difference between the professional game and what you're doing at Team Feepay? Because from our conversations, that there are some crossovers, right?
Yeah, well, I'm still in football, and I feel that grassroots football is and always will be the bread and butter of the game in this country. I don't think that's going to change.
Mm.
And I took an opportunity to work with Team Feepay, which is an online club development management program. It's a fintech online platform app where clubs can join as a club partner. It helps with the basics like drawing down membership fees, subscriptions, they're the basics, but it also works on the governance side, the football side. You know, we offer webinars, one-on-ones, it offers help with volunteers, and it has these pillars that it uses. And really, that has been quite exciting for me to take a step back from the pro football and come into the grassroots and really try and help the grassroots clubs develop, which overall gives everybody time back because
Yeah,
you know yourself, Chris, football is the biggest thief of time.
yeah,
And it gives some time back to the volunteers and it helps them with what they want to do, which is get smiles on faces and players developing. And, you know, working for Team Feepay at the minute, I've only been in it a few months. It's been 7 or 8 clubs we've signed up in the Northwest. We've probably got another close to 100 clubs in the Northwest. We're looking to look at tournaments. We've got a webinar coming up on about our teams and tours because, as you've just said, I still think there is no better experience than experiencing other cultures, other languages, other styles of football. Some nice weather. Obviously, we're having a bit of a climate issue here, but you know, I think taking teams abroad is fantastic. So having that opportunity on the webinar tomorrow night, a lot of teams have already booked on. People can still book on. They can follow me on social media. I'll put all the links out there. But back to the recruitment and the scouting, going abroad was a real eye opener. You know, seeing, as you say, and experiencing different cultures, you know, different languages, and trying to coach in there and trying to obviously study and see how others live and operate. You know, grassroots isn't as strong as it is in this country as some countries. But one thing I would say is, you know, working at Manchester United, you know, you'd travel the world. Working for Bolton Wanderers, I'd traveled the world. But I even took the likes of little old Accrington Stanley. We went to Paris, we went to Madrid, we went to Las Vegas.
wow,
And those memories you can't take away. They are what I call mantelpiece moments where you have a fantastic picture of, you know, an Accrington Stanley player with his family and they're there on the strip in front of, you know, Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas, with the fountains going off. The moments that you can't take away, taking teams round the Bernabeu, you know, traveling to Vegas and playing in such a competitive tournament like it was. You know, you can't take these experiences away. Some of those boys that were in the team that we took to Las Vegas are now playing professional football and international football.
right,
So those experiences are valuable for everybody. And as a recruitment and a scout, that also, you know, you're fishing in a much bigger pond when you can travel. Obviously, we had the referendum and Brexit, and
yeah,
that changed the landscape completely in terms of professional scouting. We're not on an even playing field with the European teams because we can't take your Garnachos of this world, for example, and things like that. But I'm a bit of a bi British English, and it really has opened it for clubs to fish in a different pond, and that is obviously where the likes of Blackpool come in.
mm,
You know, and the smaller clubs can obviously gain compensation if the bigger clubs come in for players. And now scouting is very much focused on watching Cat threes, Cat twos, but that's not neglected the grassroots. The grassroots is more important than it's ever been as well.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you, and you do see a lot more, a lot more of these private companies as well forming and playing against academies, and then again going on tour. There's one that springs to mind. That's I think it's based in Belfast that actually goes to Barcelona every year. But it is these experiences, of course, that it doesn't just give them the experience of going and playing abroad in different styles. I know myself playing in Gibraltar years ago. You know, here in the UK, it's a case of you know, how quickly can we get the ball forward, whereas in Spain, it's all about it's more possession based, as we're seeing with like your Man Cities and everything like that. So it's great for them to be able to adapt that, but also it's a great opportunity for them to get in the shop window as well. Because of course, like we alluded to, there are going to be scouts out there. There's going to be other clubs that are going to be, looking at the opposition players and seeing if there's anyone that they can potentially look into their ranks. So, sort of touching upon recruitment a little bit. Obviously, an area that we're both very, very familiar with. What is the realities of being scouted, David, from day one being playing grassroots? Because a lot of players will get in touch with people like us on LinkedIn and say, "I want to be scouted. What can I do?" So, what can people do to get in front of scouts?
Listen, I think the first and foremost is you've got to be active. You've got to be playing. You look at the likes of, say, the Manchester area. The players are playing there Saturday, Sunday. They do double bubble, same they do on Merseyside. Other parts of the country, they might either just play on the Saturday or just the Sunday, like where I am, based up sort of the Fylde Coast area in Lancashire. So I think it's important that the lads play as much as they can. I think it's important that, players still enjoy the game and play with that smile on the face. But look, the nature of the game that we're in, they can have all the attributes that's required, and I'll touch on my 4As later, but they can have all those. They can have the motivation, they can have the discipline, they can have everything. But just with the game it is in this country, that's still no guarantee of success, unfortunately. So many do fall by the wayside. But I would always say, you've got to be playing grassroots. You've got to be playing a good level of grassroots. You've got to then be looking to see if you can tap into the schoolboys, the district, the county sides, because that's a very important side of it for grassroots players, because they might be playing alongside players that play for Liverpool, Manchester United, just depending what area they're from. All those type of things. Scouts are actively always out looking at games. They might not wear the logo gear. They might think that scouts are not there, but they're there. And certainly the Northwest is a hotbed of scouting activity. He's very aggressive in the recruitment. He's very competitive in the recruitment. But, sometimes you think that you've not been watched or you've not been seen, but you will have. You know the database we started gathering at Blackpool. You can imagine what the database I had when I was at Manchester United. Players.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes good to go without your logo, because everyone gets worked up. Parents start saying to the kid, "Oh, I've seen a Man United, oh, I've seen a Blackpool scout, oh, I've seen a Everton scout." And then everyone gets worked up and excited, and they don't play the normal game. You just got to play your natural game. But I think, going back to what I was saying, scouts are out there, they're active. I'm on the circuit all the time, like you. We see scouts constantly. Some wear the logo, as I say, some don't. But, I would say to people out there, just keep playing, keep encouraging, keep supporting the players that you've got, your sons and now even daughters, because scouts are out scouting the girls' game, because that's obviously, growing like no other sport probably in the world. But yeah, I think the scouts out there, they're watching games. They're always out there watching.
Yeah, and I suppose it's coming out of your comfort zone again, isn't it? Because I mean, obviously we look at the quality and caliber of player that we're going to bring into a club, and you're always going to be, scouts are obviously going to be looking more the top two divisions, aren't they, of any specific league, as
Yeah.
opposed to the Division Threes, Division Fours, just because, of course, in theory, they are going to be the best two divisions. So really, you've got to sort of take yourself away from playing with your friends, haven't you? Really? Yes, you've got to know.
Sometimes, yeah, you do. And I think a lot of kids want to play with their friends, and I understand that. But sometimes, your friends might, not be at that level. I call it ABC coaching, ability-based coaching. And you've got to play with the level that you feel you're the level at. But that's not to say you shouldn't neglect the Division Fives of East Manchester, for example, where, when I was at Man United, me and a fellow scout picked up a player who was playing Division Five, and signed for the academy after going into the emerging talent, then going on trial, and has signed, and he's probably one of the better players in the group, and he's been in there a couple of years. But
Oh,
I think what happens now is just the nature of the way our game's gone. We're very much a transient, we're very much a migration in terms of what we do. So, people are arriving in the country, whether that be refugees, they're arriving in the country, moving into the city centres. And sometimes when the buddy scheme comes in high school, it might be they end up playing for a Division 5 side or a Division 3 side rather than the top teams because they're harder to get into. So that's why I think a lot of scouts aren't neglecting those lower leagues, but as a rule, you tend to have the better players playing in the better teams.
yeah, 100%. Of course it's understanding that and knowing that as well. So when it comes to the actual scouting process, obviously when a player's an expression of interests actually been made by a scout, the scout then goes back to the club and says, right, I like this player. What is the process of that? If you're able to, of course, go into that a little bit, because I know there's obviously some bits that can be said and some bits that can't be said.
Yeah, I think sometimes it depends on the scout who's bringing that player to the table. How long have they been in the game? What's their experiences? What's their scout's eye like, as we always say? And is it a case of is there other clubs interested? A lot goes into the process. You, for example, when you were bringing players in, I was asking you, was other scouts watching and
Yeah,
what were the parents saying of other scouts' approach? Sometimes you might have to speed the process up. Otherwise, it might be multiple eyes multiple times to gather that information so you've got a more holistic approach on the player walking through the door. And then most clubs have target monitor lists that you get sent by your head of recruitment. You then fire them back over. You've then added them onto a system. More often than clubs are using PMA, now known as Kitman Labs. All the data and information goes on there, and then an invite will be generated. But you've got to look at things like the pond that you're fishing in. You're in sort of Manchester area. It's competitive.
yeah,
A lot of clubs are in there wanting those players. Same with Merseyside, for example. But if you go certain areas, look, the level just isn't as great. So you've got to understand what pond you're fishing in. You've then got to understand on positional requirements. Is that a position that's required? Is that a target? Is that an age group we're looking for? I know when I was at Blackpool, I used to say to the scouts, working with the academy director and the coaches, there'd be certain teams that we wouldn't necessarily be looking for players for unless they were going to go at the top end. If you
yeah,
remember, we had one age group in particular that we were really trying to kind of work through and look to try and recruit. So yeah, a lot of the process does depend. There's a lot goes on behind the scenes which people don't see, but it is still bread and butter. It is still eyes. It is still observations, and it is still people's personal opinions.
yeah, and that is it. It is the opinion, isn't it, more than anything? So
Yeah,
let's talk a bit about is it the four A's, Dave, that were the sort of
yeah.
earlier on? What are
So
they?
my Bolton days, I was introduced and expanded on a four A's philosophy. And when I say it's controversial, it's not as controversial now. But when I was starting the four A's, and we're probably talking, I don't know, 20 odd years ago. So it was quite controversial because the first A is attitude, that little thing that makes a big difference. You can't get round that. Players' attitudes, their motivation, their self motivation, their desire, all these things that come in attitude, their body language, because your body language is always weeping something. And a good scout will look at body language just to see what a player's weeping to them. From attitude, I then went to athleticism. That's a bit of the controversy, and I'll touch base on that. We know what we're looking for now as an athlete, but when I was talking about that 20 years ago, I was shot down quite a bit
Right.
because the next day is the ability. Now, we've got to be able to play football still, But the ability now at the highest level isn't just about what they can do on the ball, because technically players are better than they've ever been.
Yeah.
It's about what they do off the ball is important as well. Creating space for themselves, creating space for others. That comes into the athleticism working off the ball. Tracking back now and running back to defend has become huge in the game. So the athletic side comes before the ability, and I've always had that. We now know how the Premier League and most of the English game is so athletic. So that's where the 4As came in. And then the last day was about ambition. And that is about that again, that drive, that motivation. You know, you might be playing for your grassroots team and you end up wanting to play in the Champions League, but you might have a varied route to get there. And obviously, Manchester United's done exactly that with your Marcus Rashfords of this world. You know, they've played grassroots. They've moved from grassroots into the academy and ended up playing in the Champions League. But I think the 4As, it's something that I've stuck with. It's something that I've always been willing to share. I've seen people who've worked with me over the years have adapted it and changed it to fit what they're doing. But the overriding factor is the attitude seems to stay right at the start. And we all now understand just how athletic the game is going. The women's game is going to experience the same thing. You know, the athletes will be the ones that clubs are looking for. And the athletic profile in a player has to be there. And it's the same with, I'd say, most sports now. You know, you look at rugby, you're a rugby fan, you look at rugby years ago when it was amateur or part-time, and you look how the professionalism in the game now and how big and strong and powerful and quick the rugby league players certainly are. And that is down to the fact that they stick to the 4As. But I think like in football, off the ball become very important. The movement of players has become huge in the game. You know, you look at, and as you said about the styles, so you've got your Man City who will pass and pass and pass and pass. You've got others that, yeah, they'll be like, you look at a Van Dijk the other day, you know, some of the, how he runs back and tracks back just because they can play such a high line because they realise he's got such pace. The opposition might not have that type of pace, so they play a bit of a lower block and hit on the counter with pace and speed. But the overriding factor can be is you've still got to have that athleticism to cope with any level of the game, and you've got to be able to play football. You can't take that away. You've got to be able to play still.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we know ourselves when it comes to recruiting a player. We know the players that go outside the box and do one-to-one coaching or do, you know, other group training sessions, because it makes a big difference in terms of the way they conduct themselves. And like you say, attitudes are king. And I look back, my first experience in football going back nearly 24 years now at Northampton Town. We had a 5-year-old lad who wasn't the best technically, but his attitude shone through. And then his brother was 12, and he was the best player within the development centre by far. But it came down to one player had to be released, and unfortunately, the younger player got kept on because there was more chance of him developing, whereas the older player got released because of his attitude, and rightly so.
I think the attitude is it's a lifestyle. I think it's not a light switch. You know, you live your attitude. I see players at the academy, and you talk about players having one-on-one. I've been to a tournament over Christmas, and there was a team playing in the tournament that was full of Cat 1, Cat 2 players from the top clubs in the Northwest. Now, a coach had brought them together because while the academy shut down, they wanted to continue their work and development. Now, I am sure some of the clubs won't agree with that, but you know, a lot of academy players now are doing one-on-ones, and there are some good one-on-one coaches out there. Yourself, you know, you've had academy players in doing your athletic program because they want that extra development, they want that extra yard, you know, they want that extra bit that hopefully will get them across the line, even though we know the chance of making it is still such a low percentage.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's another thing with clubs as well. And when the players go into a club, is have they then got the ability to still play grassroots? Because there are some clubs, of course, that don't allow players to play grassroots once they've signed on the academy either, do they?
Yeah, there's kind of you can play grassroots. I think up to about under 11, under 12s as well as do academy. Some clubs kind of advise parents it's not what they want them to do. But even when I was at Manchester United, they had an agreement where the players could still play schoolboys, they could play for their high school, they could play, for their county side, because I think the variety and formats of different football can be good. I remember going abroad with Manchester United for a tournament, and when I watched Man United play the teams that they're playing regular on a Saturday, Sunday, the the percentage that they have in possession is very high. But
Yeah.
when Man United go to the tournaments and you're playing your Barcelonas, your Ajax, your Real Madrids, they don't have as much possession. So it's interesting to see how the players cope under a competitive environment, a tournament environment, and having less possession and having to work that much harder. And like I said, part of the 4A's is that ability off the ball.
Yeah, I understand. Adaptability is key. You've got to be able to adapt to
Huge.
different thing. So conscious of time a little bit. So let's move back on to Team Feepay a bit. I think we alluded to obviously grassroots is the king or queen, if you like,
Yeah.
of the game, and that a lot of stress is put on the volunteers. So you know a, a management company like Team Feepay is it safe to say in its infancy really over the last sort of few years. So
Yeah, it's over the last few years and it's really looking to expand and grow. We've now got teams globally, but obviously the focus is the English and Irish market, because obviously it's based in Belfast. But I'm doing a demo Friday and meeting a team from Australia up at Bolton Wanderers Stadium. So, that we are looking to expand. We've just took on a load of new staff, having a real recruitment drive, and people will see a lot more about Team Feepay. But it focuses on 5 pillars, which are finance, which is a big thing for clubs. How do they draw the subscriptions? How do they keep a record of them? It can be a minefield. It can be very time consuming if you're trying to do it just on an Excel spreadsheet,
mm,
or as I say, writing on the back of a fag packet or a beer mat, trying to keep on top of stuff's not that easy. So the finance is a big one. The governance now in football is huge, making sure everything's there, your codes of conduct, everything that you need to make sure that you can be a charter standard club and follow the policies the FAs are setting out. It's also got a football side. We're looking to improve coaches. We're looking to give advice. We're looking to do webinars. We're looking to do something on the scouting side as well. All sorts of different things. It's got an equipment and a facilities one. We're helping people develop their facilities. Some clubs are looking for an opportunity to develop 3G. We know there's a distinct lack of 3G facilities. So we're looking to do that. But it's also as well, it might be something like on the sponsorship side, and it might be that, the club's looking for more of a how to drive revenues, because when the clubs go for grants, they have to have a sort of returning revenue constantly. And
mm.
this is where Team Feepay can bring that in. It's also doing the tours. It's also looking to do tournaments. But I can't stress enough how it can really help grassroots football. Obviously, like anything, all of them out there, there is a percentage charge from the subscriptions. But for me, for what it offers, it's minimal for
Mm.
what time it can give back to the volunteers. And that might be just more family time, but it's time back looking at players, watching players, putting smiles on faces, dealing with parents, and really, as it says, developing that overall strategy for a club.
Yeah, no, that's great because it's like with any investment, Dave. As you know, you've got to see the end result, and if you don't see the end result, then obviously you're not going to understand the value that it gets. But obviously,
Yeah,
time is invaluable. Time with family, because these little things like time with your family, that's obviously going to have a psychological effect in terms of how much that coach is going to want to give back to that club, which I think
yeah,
is another reason why I suppose with this as well, it's going to also help with the retaining of grassroots coaches as well because of the amount of time. that it's going to say, because I think
Yeah, and it's things like even just something simple that's on the app. You're at pitchside and you don't have access to the app, and I can go off this as grassroots experience. You might not know some of the medical issues your players may have. On the app, a coach can go straight away and find out what medical issues they have
oh,
straight away at pitchside, which is good information. Heaven forbid if anything's happening or occurring.
mm,
So, I can't stress enough how this can really help develop so many areas of any club. But yeah, the time is a big one. If people saw it on the demo, it might take you quite some time to gather information on who's paid this month, who hasn't paid this month,
gotcha.
who do I need to chase up. This can do it within, and I mean seconds. We show it on the demo, and within less than 10 seconds, it's there for people to see just what monies have brought in that month. And some of these clubs, when you're charging, even £20,
Mm,
£25 a month, and you've got several hundred players, there's a lot of money that you've got to be looking at and looking after, and a lot of people that you've got to make happy. So if you're looking on top of that, how many volunteers have you got in that group, let alone the committee volunteers? You might have coaches, you might have a team mum who looks after the finances side. The days of having coaches have their own bank accounts and put money in,
oh, God,
those days have got to finish. They've
yeah.
got to finish. We need to take the game to the next level, and this is what excited me about coming on board for Team Feepay.
No, that's brilliant. So where, how can people find out more about Team Feepay, and also Dave, how can people get in touch with you to find out more and get you involved with what they're doing as well?
Yeah. Well, my email address is dave.bailey at teamfeepay.co. Sorry, Dave.Bailey. Hang on, I think it's David. But we can get in touch. Well, first of all, they can go on the website. Everything's on the website from there. You can see the lot from there. So that'll give you a good insight. I'm all over social media. I usually have the handle of Dave J Bailey 13. So I'm all over social media. And as I say, if people are interested from there, they can always reach out to me. And then I will send me email. I don't want to get bombarded, but I will send me email and I will send me number. But I would say, reach out, because if you're looking at time consuming effort in the way that you're operating your grassroots club, we can help. And it's just a free, no obligation demo, 45 minutes, an hour tops.
Hmm.
It's more what questions might come back. But we've signed teams that may have 500-600 players. That's a lot to
Oh,
deal with. It's huge numbers, huge money. And we can bring that all in our app, all in one place. It doesn't just work on the app. You can get it on your laptop, get it on your computers. But I think for grassroots, it's a fantastic way forward, and it just makes life easier.
No, 100%. Well, Dave, I really do appreciate your time this morning. It's been absolutely brilliant to catch up. Great to see that you're continuing your progress as well and continue to help
Yeah.
clubs and grassroots teams. Well, guys, do reach out to Dave. He's a fountain of knowledge, and 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure that you'll definitely gain something on top of the knowledge you've already gained within the podcast. We'll stick the links in below, so feel free. Get onto the Team Feepay's website. Like Dave says, have that conversation with him. It's that investment that you're going to make, which is going to make the biggest difference to not just your.
And you're right, Chris. It's just a conversation to start. That's all I'm asking for, a conversation. And I know that they'll be impressed, but if it's not for them at this time, fully understand. But listen, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I will see you, I'm sure, at the side of the pitch sometime.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. We'll have a coffee. We'll have a coffee in hand next time as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Take it easy,
All
buddy.
right, mate.
We'll
Take
catch up
care.
soon.
Thank you.